Alien queens needed human DNA, but love wasn't part of the plan. He was meant to be studied. She wanted to keep him. It started with a crash, literally. Commander Jack Rayner's drop pod tore through the atmosphere of Theta 5 like a meteor, flames licking its sides, systems failing one by one. He should have been nothing but ash and twisted metal. But instead, the pod slammed into the soft alien ground, bounced once, then rolled to a stop in the middle of a glowing field beneath 3 pale moons. Jack groaned, half-conscious, his uniform, scorched and torn in all the wrong places. When he forced his eyes open, he wasn't greeted by a rescue crew or a medic drone. He was surrounded by long, swaying silver grass, luminous blue trees, and a dozen tall, armored women pointing glowing spears at him. At the center of the circle stood one unlike the others. She wore no helmet. Her skin shimmered with soft golden, patterns that moved like water, her long black hair floating as if carried by unseen wind. Her eyes were golden, slitted like a cat's and locked onto Jack's naked body with more than just professional interest. "State your designation," she commanded. Jack coughed, then chuckled. "Do I at least get dinner first?" That made her pause. None of the others spoke. One of the soldiers raised a scanner. The display flickered, then flashed red. The alien woman's brows lifted in surprise. "Human male," she murmured, approaching him slowly, fully intact, and quite large. Jack glanced down, smirked, and didn't bother to hide anything. "You know, we get that a lot." She crouched beside him, eyes focused more on his anatomy than his injuries. "You're disproportionately blessed." Jack raised an eyebrow. "Flattered." "And you are?" She tilted her head as if amused by his tone. "Princess Viraya of the HFY Sovereign Gene Court. You've landed in our royal harvest zone. We extract genetic material here for selective breeding." "Sounds fancy," Jack said, sitting up. "But not exactly how I imagined meeting royalty." Viraya stood tall and graceful. "You should be dead. No one survives impact in this zone. And yet here you are, alive, and unusually durable." She turned to her guards. "Take him to the lab." Gently. Jack was carried into a sleek, floating transport. Inside, the walls shimmered with living metal adjusting to his shape as he was laid onto a soft platform. He didn't resist. The view was better than any prison cell, and he had the feeling things were about to get interesting. Inside the facility, Viraya watched from behind a crystal screen as Jack underwent scans. His muscles, bone density, organ structure, everything about him screamed resilient. And when they reached the lower regions of the scan, the machine stalled. One of the scientists cleared her throat. "He's well beyond HFY norms, Princess." "I can see that," Viraya replied softly, leaning closer to the screen. Her golden eyes lingered a little too long on the heat, signature between Jack's legs. "And I want full compatibility tests. Natural method." The lab fell silent. "That wasn't standard procedure." "You mean direct contact?" the lead researcher asked, hesitating. "Yes," Viraya said without shame. "I will oversee it. Myself." Later, Jack was brought into a private chamber, part medical suite, part luxury bedroom. He was given a strange, silky robe that didn't quite cover anything, and offered glowing fruit that tasted like honey and mint. Viraya entered, wearing a thin gown of soft material that shimmered like her skin. She approached him with a calm, confidence, eyes never leaving his. "You understand your situation, human?" she asked. "Not entirely," Jack admitted, "but I like the lighting, and the company." She smiled. "Your kind possesses traits we've only dreamed of. Strength, endurance, adaptability, and apparently, size." He leaned back, arms behind his head. "All natural, I assure you." Viraya touched a control panel, dimming the lights. Bioluminescent patterns flowed across her skin in response to her emotions, and Jack could see the colors deepen as she drew closer. "Our people use artificial extraction," she said, her voice low, "but it never produces consistent results. Emotion, physical connection, pleasure, These things matter. We believe your kind might be the missing piece. Jack tilted his head. So what you're saying is, you want to sleep with me? For science. Her hand touched his chest, then slowly slid lower. For our future, he grinned. Well, in that case, let's save your species. As her gown slipped to the floor and the glowing patterns on her body danced like fire, Jack realized something deep in his gut. This wasn't just a one-night experiment. This was the beginning of something far bigger. And if he played his cards right, he wasn't just going to survive. He was going to thrive, with the princess at his side. And maybe, just maybe, inside her heart. Jack Rayner had seen a lot in his years as a recon commander. Mutant jungles, acid storms, pirate queens, but nothing quite prepared him for the Helyari Royal Lab, especially not when it smelled like perfume and humming electricity. He lay half naked on a reclining platform shaped like a blooming flower, warm and soft beneath him. Overhead, pale crystal lights pulsed in rhythm with his heartbeat. Across from him stood Princess Virea, arms folded, golden skin glowing with shifting patterns that seemed to shimmer whenever she looked at him. She wasn't trying to hide her interest. In fact, Jack was pretty sure she was broadcasting it like a beacon. "This chamber is shielded," she said, walking slowly around him. "No observers, no recording, just us." Jack chuckled. "What? Not even for research purposes? I thought this was all very official." She stopped beside him, tilting her head. "We tried artificial means, dozens of donor samples, thousands of simulations. But your kind doesn't cooperate with sterile methods. We need raw biology, and yours is extremely raw." Jack grinned, stretching out. "You know, back on Earth, this would be considered foreplay." Virea raised an eyebrow. "Then Earth is wiser than we thought." Her hand hovered over his chest but didn't touch. Instead, she activated a floating panel that projected his vitals in the air. Pulse, oxygen, testosterone levels, and something labeled genetic stimulus feedback, which was flashing red. "Your readings are off the scale," she murmured. "And your testosterone, it's affecting my own chemistry." Jack's eyes widened a bit. "I've been told I have that effect." Now she did touch him, her fingers light as silk trailing down his chest, leaving heat and goosebumps in their wake. Her bioluminescent markings flared in swirling golds and soft blues. "You feel that?" she asked, her voice now softer, more curious than commanding. "Every inch," he replied, though his breath was catching. "I meant me, not you." She smiled. "Oh," he said, and then added with a wink, "Still yes." Virea slid into his lap without invitation. Her body was warm, pliant but powerful, like some elegant panther god, their eyes locked. There was no awkward tension, no fumbling. She knew exactly what she wanted. Jack didn't resist. He never planned to. Her lips brushed his ear. "This is for science, say it." Jack smirked. "For science." When their bodies finally connected, really connected, it wasn't just pleasure. The walls of the chamber responded. The flower-shaped platform shifted, adjusted, adapted. Light burst from Virea's skin like slow lightning. Her markings pulsed faster, syncopated to Jack's rhythm. She gasped, not from pain or surprise, but from recognition. "My body's adjusting to yours," she whispered, watching her hands change color where they touched his chest. "Our cells are responding, right now, merging." "Must be my charming DNA," Jack said, not entirely joking. But Virea was too fascinated to tease. She sat back, straddling him, eyes wide with wonder, her entire body humming like it had plugged into the universe itself. No wonder artificial methods failed. This, she gestured to the heat between them, to the glowing dance of her skin, to Jack's flushed face. This connection, it's the missing component. "You mean emotions?" Jack asked. "Or performance?" "Both," she said, breathless, "especially the performance." She kissed him then, hungrily, almost reverently, as if she was tasting the last secret in the galaxy. Their bodies moved with rising intensity, and the chamber's walls pulsed in rhythm. The AI chimed a low, warbling tone. "Warning," it said in a pleasant voice. "Unregistered hormonal bonding detected." Viraya didn't even glance away from Jack. "Override," she said between kisses. "Let it bond." The AI paused, acknowledged. When it was over, if something that wild, that cosmic, could ever truly be over, Jack lay back, catching his breath, watching the princess with a new level of awe. She was glowing, not figuratively, literally. "I think I broke your sensors," he muttered. Viraya smiled lazily, sprawled beside him, her head on his shoulder. "You've broken more than that." Then she sat up suddenly, serious. Her fingers slid to her abdomen, glowing brighter. "It's already begun," she said. "My system, it's accepted your seed. No rejection, no resistance." Jack blinked. "Wait, seriously? That fast?" She nodded, awe in her voice. "Your DNA doesn't just work, it dominates. It's rewriting my cellular pathways. You've bypassed 1,000 years of genetic filters. My people can't do that with each other." Jack blinked again. "Well, damn, I guess that makes me a keeper." Viraya looked down at him, gold eyes glowing, voice quiet but intense. "Yes, you are." Outside the chamber, the rest of the facility remained unaware of what had just happened. But Viraya knew. Jack Rayner wasn't just a study subject anymore. He was her mate, and the first father of a new generation. One born not in a lab, but in fire. Not in a lab, but with parents who actually care. She leaned into him. For once, the princess wasn't glowing with heat or lust or stress, just peace. "You're more than a soldier," she said. "You're the future." Jack kissed her temple. "Yeah, well, you're not just royalty anymore, you're mine. And this kid, he's gonna change everything." Outside, the stars raced past. Behind them, a regime full of fear and tradition. Ahead, a new world, a new family, and fire enough to light the galaxy. The rogue glider sliced through space like a silver arrow, sleek and defiant. On board, silence wasn't emptiness. It was electricity. Princess Viraya lay on the reclining berth, one hand pressed to her glowing stomach, the other gripping Jack's. Her golden skin shimmered in soft pulses, flickering like candlelight in response to his touch. Her breathing was steady, but her thoughts were a storm. They had escaped, but not far enough. Jack sat beside her, shirtless, arms folded, watching her like she was made of something precious and dangerously flammable. "You sure you're okay?" he asked, thumb gently stroking the top of her hand. "I'm fine," she lied, even though her body trembled like a live wire. "It's just, he's growing fast." "Is that normal?" "No," she said softly. "It's better." The hybrid child inside her was unlike anything the Helyari had ever seen. Already her vitals were syncing to his. Bioluminescent patterns she couldn't control danced across her body in new colors. Greens and reds no Helyari had ever produced. Her heartbeat had doubled. Her blood chemistry had altered. And Jack's presence? It stabilized her. Like gravity, like fire, like love. She didn't say it out loud, not yet. But Jack knew. He could see it in the way she looked at him now. Not as a specimen, not even as a partner, but as someone she couldn't afford to lose. "I did a lot of reckless things in the military," Jack said, trying to lighten the air. "Jumped out of shuttles, ate unidentified meat on Sigma-9, even dated a lieutenant with anger issues and 3 cybernetic arms. But this?" He squeezed her hand. "This is the one thing I'd never undo." Viraya turned her head. Her gold eyes sparkled in the low light. "You mean running from an empire with an illegally conceived superchild?" He grinned. "That's the second best part. What's the first?" Jack leaned close, lips barely grazing her ear. You. She didn't smile. Not this time. Instead, she kissed him. It was slower now, deeper. Not the heat of lust, but the fire of something settling into permanence. Her fingers tangled in his hair as his body curved protectively around hers, their skin humming in harmonic waves. Their child stirred, soft, pulsing light radiating from her womb, responding to their contact. It wasn't just emotion, it was energy, literal energy, vibrating through the ship, dancing across panels and consoles. The ship's AI stuttered. Emotional resonance threshold exceeded. Adaptive shielding engaged. Jack blinked. We're tripping the alarms again, aren't we? Yes, Varela murmured, breathless. But I think we just invented a new form of propulsion. The Helyari Council had issued an interstellar warrant within hours. Their phrasing was cold. Subject, Varela of House Ilaran. Violation of genetic law. Unauthorized hybrid conception. Target to be returned for DO. Termination or full extraction. But Varela wasn't a target. Not anymore. She was a mother. And mothers don't surrender. They fight. On a hidden moon orbiting a red dwarf star, Jack and Varela found shelter in an abandoned biolab, a relic from the early war days. It was dusty and cold, but full of ancient tech the Council had forgotten. They worked in shifts. He reinforced the perimeter. She adapted the med pods for cross-species monitoring. The more time passed, the more Varela's body transformed. Her skin became warmer, her pheromones richer, her voice deeper, more human in tone. Jack noticed it all, especially at night. They didn't sleep much. The child inside her glowed stronger during their most intimate moments. It was like he fed off their bond. Their physical connection was no longer just pleasure. It was fuel. Varela would gasp, skin alight, eyes fluttering. He's reacting to us. Jack would hold her tighter. Good. Let him know what love feels like. The next day, the data proved it. The hybrid was generating controlled energy surges, microbursts that influenced machines, gravity, even temperature. And those spikes? They matched perfectly to moments of physical closeness between his parents. It's not just chemistry, Varela whispered, staring at the display. It's evolution. She turned to Jack, her voice trembling. He's not just going to be stronger, he's going to be smarter. He's learning emotional resonance as a survival trait. Jack leaned on the console. Love is a weapon. Love is a strategy, she corrected. He chuckled. Same thing where I'm from. But peace didn't last. The Helyari found them. A dread ship appeared in orbit, dark and silent, like a predator that had already chosen its meal. Aboard were hunters, genetically enhanced, emotionless, and programmed to recover rogue DNA at any cost. Varela's stomach tightened, not just from fear, but from the child inside her, now pulsing wildly with warning. He knows, she whispered. He feels them. Jack checked his sidearm, then grabbed her hand. Then let's show them what they're really up against. He kissed her fast, hard, with the promise of return. Then he turned to face the coming storm. Behind him stood the woman who'd changed his life, and inside her, the future of two species, ready to burn. The sky above the hidden moon split open like a wound. The Helyari dreadship emerged without ceremony. No broadcast, no warning, just a quiet planet-sized threat sliding into orbit like a predator taking position over prey. Its hull pulsed with the cold glow of the Council's judgment. Return the anomaly, or be erased. Inside the old biolab, Jack stood at the observation window, jaw tight. He'd seen warships before. Hell, he'd fought plenty. But this one wasn't here for battle. It was here for his family. Behind him, Varela moved slower now. Her body carried weight, literal and otherwise. The child growing inside her wasn't just hybrid. He was active. Her skin glowed almost constantly now, cycling through brilliant hues even when she slept. The bioluminescent patterns were no longer Helyari or human. They were something new, and the patterns pulsed strongest when Jack was near. He could feel it too, like gravity between souls. Jack turned from the window. How long until they land? Hours. Maybe less, she said, one hand on her stomach, the other on a console. But they won't talk. They'll extract. Cold. Clinical. No witnesses. Just silence. Jack cracked his knuckles. They're gonna be disappointed. She looked up at him, exhaustion behind her eyes, but fire beneath it. You don't have to fight them, Jack. You could run. They only want me. He raised an eyebrow. You seriously think I'd leave you behind? He took 2 long strides, stopping in front of her. You're carrying our kid. You really think I'm letting some emotionless science cult take you, apart just to protect their sterile little bloodline? She blinked, her lip trembled. And then she did something unexpected. She laughed. Just a little, but it was real. You know, she said softly, I used to think humans were reckless, irrational, driven by instinct and hormones. Guilty, Jack grinned, especially the hormone part. But now, she stepped into him, wrapping her arms around his chest, pressing her glowing body against his warmth. Now I think your chaos might be exactly what our species needs. Their foreheads touched. Jack rested a hand on her stomach, where the child stirred, his pulse sinking with theirs. Let's give them something to fear, he whispered. They didn't have weapons, not the kind that could punch through dreadship armor, but they had something else. Data. Proof. Virea's hybrid pregnancy had progressed far beyond any Helyari model. Her vitals were stabilizing because of Jack's biology, not in spite of it. The child's energy bursts were measurable, directed. More importantly, they were empathetic. The AI had one report marked, theoretical miracle. We broadcast this, Virea said, and we don't just win, we change everything. Jack frowned. They'll jam it. Unless we aim it directly into the Sovereign Council's core relay, she countered, pulling up a glowing interface. One burst transmission. If it reaches them, the data becomes public. They can't bury it, can't deny it. They'll have to acknowledge the hybrid is viable and powerful. Okay, Jack said, but how do we hit a sovereign relay with nothing but a glorified science shack and a pregnant princess? Virea grinned. We use him. She placed his hand back on her stomach. The pulse of light under her skin flared brighter. The baby responded to them, through them. They'd already learned he could influence machines, even in utero. If they could channel that energy into the comms grid, they might generate a signal strong enough to punch through the Council's encryption wall. So let me get this straight, Jack muttered, suiting up. We're going to emotionally bond during an artificial energy surge, while your unborn baby hijacks a planetary comm tower with psychic mood swings. Virea touched his cheek, glowing softly. It's a very human plan, Jack laughed. Damn right it is. The transmission chamber buzzed as they powered it up. Jack stood shirtless, connected to the neural interface. Virea lay on the biobed, belly glowing, her body wrapped in medical bands and flowing wires. They reached for each other. When their fingers touched, the room exploded with light. Not fire, not destruction, but resonance. The baby's pulse synced to theirs, and suddenly the room sang. The crystals lining the ceiling chimed like bells underwater. The console blinked alive. The waveform spikes flattened into harmony. Jack leaned in, his voice low and raw. I love you, Virea. She gasped, part from emotion, part from the flood of energy flowing through her body. I know, I feel it. So does he. The signal launched. A single focused pulse shot into orbit, through the dreadship's jammers, through Helyari filters, straight into the Council's core relay. Data flooded their systems. Hybrid vitals, genetic harmony, emotional synergy, bioluminescent resonance, the undeniable proof that love had worked where science had failed. On the dreadship, the commander watched his screens flicker. The report scrolled in front of him, and for the first time in his life, he hesitated. The child was alive, thriving, stronger than anything they'd ever produced, and created through natural emotional connection. The unthinkable had happened. Evolution had chosen love. Back on the moon, Jack collapsed beside Varaya, breathless and laughing. She smiled weakly, tears in her glowing eyes. "We did it. You sure?" She reached for his hand and placed it on her stomach. Inside, their sun glowed, calm, steady, present. The storm had passed, but the fire they'd started, that was just beginning. The moon never felt so still. No alarms, no dread ships descending. No orders barking through loudspeakers, just silence, the kind that comes after a battle won without blood. In the dim-lit chamber where they'd defied biology and rewired destiny, Jack lay beside Varaya on the berth, both of them bare-skinned and breathless beneath a blanket of bioluminescent light. Their fingers were still intertwined. Her golden skin pulsed in a gentle rhythm, no longer chaotic, but synchronized with the man who held her like she was the only thing anchoring him to the universe. And in her womb, nestled in the strange, new harmony of their shared biology, the child rested, quiet, calm, and powerful. Varaya rolled toward Jack, eyes glowing soft amber. "We bought time," she whispered, "but not peace." Jack smiled. "We don't need peace, just purpose." She studied his face, rough, handsome, kissed by scars and starlight. "You really think one child can change a civilization?" He reached over, placing a hand on her stomach. The moment his skin touched hers, their sun stirred, a faint glow, blooming outward like the ripple of a sun beneath her skin. "Not just one child," Jack said. "Ours." Word spread across the stars faster than the council could contain it. The broadcast hit like a gravity bomb, a perfect hybrid, conceived naturally, carried without artificial aid, demonstrating energy abilities that even the royal bloodlines couldn't replicate. The Sovereign Council scrambled. First came denial, then came damage control. But they couldn't unsee the data, couldn't unfeel the resonance that rippled across the psionic grid as the child's heartbeat vibrated through subspace. Some Helyari saw danger, but others saw hope, especially among the younger generation, the ones tired of sterile breeding centers and lifeless pairings assigned by genetic scores. Requests began pouring in, quietly at first. From royal researchers, from exiled scientists, from curious outworlders, all of them asking, can human genes really do that? What else happens when we bond naturally? Can we feel what she felt? They didn't want just children. They wanted connection. And that's when Jack and Varaya realized something. They weren't just rebels anymore. They were blueprints. The old lab became a sanctuary, not just for them, but for others. Helyari defectors arrived, mostly women. Curious, cautious, radiant with longing. A few brought carefully selected human males daring to test the connection for themselves. Others came alone, asking for guidance, biology scans, or just a chance to see what real bonding looked like. Jack became a reluctant teacher, Varaya, a glowing legend. "Do you really love him?" one young scientist asked during a fertility resonance session. Varaya smiled, lying on the exam table while Jack read off her vitals. "Every inch," she said, eyes locked on him. Jack didn't look up from the readings. "She's referring to my soul, obviously." Her glow flared. Their child grew faster than expected. At just 6 months gestation, the fetus began interacting directly with nearby electronic systems. Drones would hover near Varaya uncommanded. Consoles would activate with the pulse of her heartbeat. Crystals hummed in response to her moods. And Jack? He started glowing too, subtle at first. A silver shimmer across his skin after their more intimate sessions, then stronger. Eventually, when he touched her, the air itself would hum. "You're absorbing his resonance," Varaya murmured. One evening, curled against him, their bodies still slick with the heat of connection. "Even your cells are adapting." Jack kissed her neck, his voice low and playful. "You're just jealous because I'm glowing sexier." She rolled her eyes, but the laughter came easily now. So did the kisses. By the time the child reached 7 months, he no longer felt like a fetus. He felt present, aware. His pulses were precise. He calmed when Jack touched his mother. He reacted to her moods, and occasionally he broadcast his own. He was learning through emotion, as if intimacy between his parents was his language, his fuel, and his guiding star. And that intimacy? It deepened with each day. Jack would sometimes just hold Varaya through the night, their skin pressed tight, his voice murmuring nonsense against her hair. And every time they reached for each other, not in lust but in raw closeness, the sensors would go haywire. Emotional resonance, 98% neural sync, stable energy output. Increasing love wasn't just a byproduct, it was the engine. One night, the crystal sensors in the birthing chamber activated without being touched. The air grew thick with power. Varaya's skin pulsed brighter than ever before. Jack looked up from his logs. That normal? She gripped his hand, breathing hard, eyes wide with a mixture of fear and awe. No. He's starting. He's coming. Jack moved fast, but nothing could have prepared him for what followed. She didn't scream. She glowed. Her entire body lit up, radiating a spectrum that turned the chamber into a living aurora. Her pulse synced with the child's and Jack's. 3 heartbeats, 3 lives, 1 energy. She arched her back. The light pulsed once, twice, then with a blinding surge that shorted half the equipment, the child was born into Jack's hands. The baby didn't cry. He looked. Eyes like starlight, skin kissed with golden shimmer, bioluminescence in slow, steady rhythm. And when he saw his mother and father, he glowed. Like fire, like family, like the future. They named him Kyle, Helyari, for the spark between stars. And with that spark, the flame of change had officially begun. Kale was only minutes old, but the world already knew his name. Not from a decree, not from a throne, from the ripple he sent through the quantum ether, an energy field so subtle only the most sensitive instruments could detect it. And yet, the pulse that flowed from that tiny, glowing infant's body wasn't subtle. It was a wave of life, of evolution. Across the network of stars, sensors picked it up. Research stations froze. Meditation temples lit up with inexplicable light. In the heart of the Sovereign Council's crystal citadel, every AI experienced a brief but measurable emotional tremor. The child had arrived, and he wasn't just alive. He was listening. 3 weeks later, Jack stepped out of the nursery chamber and rubbed his eyes. He hadn't slept in 2 days, but his smile looked carved in place. Kyle wasn't just growing, he was learning. Already, he could lift his head, track movement, and respond to Varaya's voice with calming pulses of light. When Jack touched him, he glowed silver blue, the same color Varaya's patterns turned when she climaxed. That amused Jack endlessly. "Guess I left a lasting impression," he said once, grinning down at Kale as Varaya glared at him with mock fury. Kyle gurgled in agreement. Little traitor. Visitors came, not in warships anymore, but in small diplomatic crafts, sent cautiously under new banners, not to reclaim the child, but to learn from him. Some were Helyari elders with newly uncertain eyes. Others were humans, scientists, diplomats, even off-duty mercs with a curiosity for what exactly made human DNA so potent. They met Kale. They met Jack and Varaya. And what they found wasn't military power or raw genetics. They found family. Or first to bond naturally, without programming or artificial compatibility mapping. A man who gave everything he had, including, somehow, too much, and a princess who broke 1,000 years of protocol to follow her instincts. The child they created was more than hybrid, he was hope. When the council called for a summit, Jack laughed. "Oh, now they want to talk?" Varaya simply adjusted her crown, Yes, she wore it again now, but on her terms, and said, "Let them come." And so they did. On neutral ground, beneath the twin suns of Varia Prime, the Heliari Council, the Human Union, and representatives from half a dozen systems gathered under a biodome larger than any cathedral. In the center, standing tall between two species, was Kale. Still just a child, barely walking, but glowing like a second sunrise, arms outstretched. On one side, he held his mother's golden hand. On the other, his father's calloused one. And the council, once so rigid, once so proud, couldn't help but feel their knees weaken as Kale smiled at them, not with power, but with recognition. He knew them. He felt them. And for the first time in recorded Heliari history, a sovereign elder wept. Later, as dusk painted the dome in hues of fire and gold, Jack and Varia stood side by side, watching their son sleep inside a crystal crib surrounded by swirling patterns of soft light, his own bioluminescence creating moving images in the air. He was dreaming, and the dream was speaking back. "Do you think we did the right thing?" Varia asked softly. Jack didn't answer right away. He moved behind her, arms wrapping around her waist, kissing her bare shoulder. Her skin, even after childbirth, still pulsed beneath his touch like starlight drawn to gravity. "We didn't do what was right," he said. "We did what was real." She smiled, resting her head against his. "You think he'll grow up normal?" Jack snorted. "With you as his mother, me as his father, not a chance in hell." She laughed. "Good." As the stars blinked alive in the sky above, Jack whispered something only Varia could hear. "I didn't survive that crash to be a hero, or a father, or the poster boy for interstellar crossbreeding." He kissed her again, slower. "I just didn't know the crash was the best thing that ever happened to me." She turned in his arms, her eyes shimmering like the nebulae above them. "You weren't the only one who fell that day," she said. "I just happened to land in your arms." Their lips met, no longer with urgency, but with quiet, earned love. In the years that followed, the world changed. The Sovereign Gene Court was dismantled. Hybrid programs were restructured, not around sterile efficiency, but emotional compatibility. Love became a measurable metric. Intimacy was no longer shameful. It was studied, celebrated. Humans and Heliari cohabited, married, bred, and children like Kale became symbols of a new age, not warriors, not weapons, bridges. And it all began with a broken drop pod, a field of silver grass, and one human who smiled while naked and asked a glowing princess if dinner came before or after the science experiment. Love didn't just conquer fear, it evolved. HFY humanity foyer. And this time, so was she.